All right, we're talking.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody. For those who are not normally present at the curriculum committee, I hold a very informal committee. It is like family time. You know, we're talking back and forth. If you have something you want to say, if you just sort of raise your hand, you don't need to get up to the podium. I don't need you to say who you are. I do ask that you at least give the respect to some of the people that are talking ahead of you, not to interrupt. At least let them get their point out. On some subjects we cover, it's very emotional. This probably be one of those subjects where people have are on one side of the table and the other. What we're going to talk about, and the only subject on today's agenda, will be the policy 201, which for the school board is used to define age. There was a recommendation to that to modify it and not allow testing of children who are not of age as defined by our policy. We felt that unless we brought it in, the board felt that unless we brought it in front of the curriculum committee to discuss it, hear some parents and some of our professional staff's opinion, that it wasn't right. So we're at least going to take that step. I'm not going to promise that the recommendation that came out of from the administration is going to change, but we're at least going to be able to hear public opinion as such and be able to go from there. As a reference, the policy states that for a child to enter kindergarten, you need to be the age of 5 on or before September 1st, I believe it is now. It used to be September 30th. Now it's September 1st. And early admission would be considered if that child had a birthday from the 1st up to the 30th. Would be considered if they took testing. And in those cases where the certified psychologist evaluated the child on or before November 30th. Is that correct?
If the birthday falls within that range, right?
Right.
I think that was part of our policy.
I believe if I'm reading this, it says, in those cases, a certified school psychologist will evaluate the youngster who will be 5 years of age on or before November 30th of that year. So if you're somewhere between the 30th, September 1st and the 30th of November, that one of our certified psychologists would be able to do the evaluation, and if that child tested 2 years older than their age, then they could petition. They don't necessarily be able to, but could petition the school to be admitted in that class. Am I correct? I don't want to misspeak. Okay. One of the things that I had asked Dr. Otto is for us to determine is how many over the last number of years, and I said 3, had submitted for this testing, and based on that, how many actually passed that test?
The data is in the last 3 years, 9, 10, 11, and 11, 12, 15 had submitted, were evaluated, and
okay.
none were, all were found non-exceptional, did not qualify.
Okay. Did you find? Let's go back a little further then, because I may have to go back further to find. I assume we have tested and found a child somewhere at some time that qualified for that test?
Yes, I know of one.
Okay, and how did that child fare once they were in class? And
that particular student, she's doing pretty well.
Okay.
But she does have a gifted IQ.
Okay.
Over 130.
Okay.
And that one that is qualified, how long has that been? Is that one that you know of in 4 years? Is it I don't know that it really matters. It's just trying to get an idea.
I know it's the last few years.
Okay.
It's more than 3 years out.
I don't know that it's
But
that.
had been prior to that.
No, because she's in second grade.
Yeah. So that's my.
It could have been the year before.
Yeah, she does.
Right. It could have been.
So now, if I had asked for the last 5 years, she would have included in that
Right.
number.
Yeah.
Right. And you might just being in the building level. Can you think of any beyond that?
No. Yeah, I'm just aware of that.
She's
one.
the only one that I know.
Wait a question.
She said she knows of one, and it's a girl. I know of one, and it's a boy.
Okay,
It might be a
And-
different school.
And he is in fourth grade,
Okay.
third grade,
okay,
and he's doing exceptionally well.
That
And
was
he,
tired.
his birthday, he missed the cutoff of September. I think his birthday is October, and he's doing really well. And he's making all A's, and he's in the honors math class. I don't know why, but she only knows of one.
well,
We
again,
went
we
back
have,
3 years. We only went back 3 years.
yeah, and we also have more than one school psychologist, so
Okay.
she may not be responsible for that building, that class, or that child, so she can only
Okay.
speak from her knowledge. We have 2 others that aren't here that may be responsible or may know of that child. So, I mean, I didn't want to bring everybody out tonight. I'm looking at this more from a professional standpoint and
Okay.
trying to get their professional opinion as to what this does and where this goes. So,
But something else I wanted to bring to your attention was this child also almost skipped another grade last year.
mhm.
Just to bring to your attention. So the child was doing exceptionally well, enough that even our school district approved the child to skip another grade. So this child who would have been in first grade was in third grade.
Mhm.
And what happened was, he didn't adjust well to being with kids so much older, that he did go back to the second grade, but just imagine, that child was supposed to be in first grade. And so to say that it's not possible and the child isn't capable of doing the work and fitting in, it was more of, all of a sudden, he just realized he was around kids that were so much older.
And I don't think anybody is even stating that they can't do the work. I mean, obviously, if you're going through this testing, and you're testing chronologically 2 years more than your age, that there's no doubt they can do the work. The board has a bigger concern, and the bigger concern is the amount of work putting onto this staff of 3 to do that testing. And what we're trying to do is determine by sheer numbers. I mean, if we had 50 in the last 3 years that didn't make it, and if we add to that number and say that there's on the average of 5, so if we want to just extrapolate that out, say there was 25 in the last 5, of which 2 made it, there's a significant expense. And on top of it, the staff has other duties that are very closely associated with the special education program, where they need to maintain certain reviews for IEPs and that kind of stuff, which goes both ways. Obviously, the gifted as well as the other end of the spectrum. And all we're trying to do is determine whether it makes sense to keep. And please let me finish. And I have, and the 3 of us have an idea where we want to go with this. What the recommendation? We just want to make sure that we get what we're thinking isn't outrageous. Okay, so because I would hate to have a child that has an IQ of 130 get slowed down. I mean, because you get that child and you don't let them into kindergarten a year ahead of time, then after that they're bored. Okay, and because they're bored, they're not performing as well as they should because they're bored. Okay.
Mr. Sheen, the policy 201 that you just read, that's the current policy.
Correct.
What's the proposed change in the policy?
proposed-
Or is there a proposed change?
The proposed change is not to allow any early admission.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're looking at whether we go back and state recommend that back to the board, or whether we recommend some modification of that back to the board.
I think in all decision-making that we have, what's in the best need of the student should be prioritized over what's in the best need of the school district. And on a case-by-case basis, I think in many ways, we do inadvertently sometimes put ceilings on kids because of class size numbers, or because of cost, or because of convenience. But if you've got kids that have the potential to really thrive and grow, to make a blanket statement like that alarms me as a teacher and as a parent.
Well, the issue we have is exactly what you just said. We're now looking at, well, my child was born December 1st. It's only one day, or it's, it was born on the 5th. It's only, where do you draw that cutoff? Okay, and how far do you push that cutoff back? Yeah, I'm sure that if a child came in and they're sitting with a 150 IQ at 4.5 years old, and you petition the school, and the school said, I'm sorry, it's outside our policy. The kid was born on the 15th of December. As a parent, you're going to find something for, okay, it may not be with the school district because of their policy. You can also petition the school district for an exception to that policy, which has been done in the past outside of these guidelines. And I remember Mr. Robbins did one just that situation and approved it.
Could
So.
you be opening the door for litigation too in this circumstance?
No, because the state first of all, you don't have to have kindergarten. Okay, there's no rule that says you have to have kindergarten, so we're allowed to set the limitations of kindergarten. There is a date at which, and I believe it's PDE mandated, is it not, at what date you enter first grade, which is 6 years old.
Yeah, there's usually
Yes.
before you have any stuff.
Now, would the parents be able to take their kids to get like an outside test?
Well, that we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to that portion in a second. What I wanted to do is I wanted to ask, what does this test entail? Can you give us a little idea of what this test? I mean, not to put down. I'm a little surprised when you say a kid that's 4.5 years old needs a test to be 6.5 years old, or a kid that's 5 needs a test as a 7-year-old. Is this? It's obviously not going to be emotional maturity. It's going to be intellect, correct?
Yeah, we're specifically looking at their intelligence quotient.
Okay.
Looking at an IQ score of 130, which about 2% of the population would hit an IQ score of 130. And typically the testing sessions are very long. They're very intensive. We do ask a lot of the kids. We ask them, they pretty much need to sit pretty still, be focused on us as we speak to them. And we do try to establish a rapport as much as possible with the kids. We're very friendly with them, try to get them as comfortable as possible. But again, it's one testing situation on one day. If the child's not really with us that day, their score is going to be less than maybe what it would be on a different day. That's the nature of standardized testing in general. But depending on which assessment we use, which we have a couple choices to choose from, there's the WIPSE, the Wechsler preschool, primary and preschool scale, or the Stanford-Binet. And basically it's pretty intensive where we ask them, for the Stanford-Binet, like some of the questions we might have them define, like what is an apple, what is a dog, and gradually increase the level of complexity of what they would need to define. There's memory for sentences. There's also, it's called a working memory task where they have to tap blocks. Like I would tap them in a certain pattern. They would have to observe and then tap them in the same pattern as me. And that gradually, again, increases in complexity until we reach a ceiling point, which just means where they fatigue, where they just keep getting more than 3, I believe, wrong, incorrect. That's our ceiling. Trying to think of some of the other tasks that we do with them. Again, it's a lot of questions, a lot of answers, a lot of them getting to think. Looking at pictures, trying to find the irregularity. Like there's a guy sitting on a branch on the wrong side of the branch, sawing it off, and they have to be able to express what's wrong with this picture, that sort of thing. So it's very rigorous testing that we do with them.
How long does it? What is the typical length of these tests?
It really depends on the student. How cooperative they are, how many breaks they need. But typically it could take about an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours for one assessment.
One assessment, okay. But we definitely have again, are these tests that are standard throughout the industry? So if I was going to Conrad Weiser and wanted my child to be early admitted, they'd give them the same tests?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like Boone come up with these tests on their own, and okay. And again,
these are nationally standardized tests.
and you'll see where I'm going when I'm asking these questions, okay? I want to make sure that somebody can't say, well, you're giving a test that nobody else is giving a test. Yes?
And I have to say, I'm not here for my own children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, when I hear this, it just upsets me because my son is gifted. Mrs. Hefter had my daughter who was not gifted, but she excelled in the classroom 2 and 3 levels above her peers. She took that test twice and did not pass it, in every shape, form, and fashion. It was proven that she was totally gifted, that the school district had ignored her, that she had sat in the classroom for 2 years, and the school, and it's a written document, that the school district was to blame for leaving her in the classroom and not being challenged. So she was put in the gifted program after a year, of battling the school district, and the judge found that the school district had failed my daughter. Now, on the other hand, my younger son, who's in 3rd grade, is in the gifted program. His IQ is 137. He 2 and 3 levels ahead in everything at age 5. But yet, the battle still goes on because when you end up with teachers who don't want to teach children who are ahead, you deal with that because they have a curriculum.
I understand, but we're
I know
here.
what you're saying,
Okay.
but what I'm saying is when you don't let those kids in early, this is what's going to happen down the road. You're ending up with kids in a classroom that are already ahead of their peers, and so it's a constant battle to get them to teach.
But it
those
also
kids.
can go the other way where you allow a child in early who isn't able to take it, and then that kid struggles, the child struggles. We're trying to come up, all I'm trying to do and all this committee is trying to do is look at the policy. Understand, by the state of Pennsylvania law, we can say that as of September 1st, period, there is no other option, okay? And if the policy as the administration wants put in place, that's the policy. I heard you at the board meeting. Several of us heard it. We brought it into the committee to discuss. And we have some empathy with you, the simple fact that we have it here, okay? I'm not going to say that it's going to stay one way or another, okay? And we need to look at it. The particular situations, I mean, your children's situations, hopefully it's been remedied and corrected. But, we can't say that whether we had this test or we allowed this to be done or not would have corrected that. The simple fact is what I'm trying to get, and I'm trying to work too, is I want to make sure that the tests that they're giving, first of all, there's very little subjectiveness to the test. Okay, either the child can hit 7 blocks in a row, or the child can hit 7 blocks in a row. The child can or cannot determine whether or not the person's sitting on the wrong side of the branch. Those kind of things. So that if this young lady here gives the test, and somebody at another school district gives a test, they're going to get the same answer. If the 2 individuals test the same child, the answer, I mean, again, my background is a little bit statistical. I'm looking for repeatability and reproducibility of a test. If I can't give that test to everybody in this room, and you test the same child, and you're within a statistical variance of the same number, then the test is invalid. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm asking these questions. I want to make sure that the test is a valid test, and it appears as though it is. I mean, it's hitting 7 blocks in a row is hitting 7 blocks in a row.
I don't have a problem with the test. I think it's a valid test.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the process I'm trying to go through logically to understand and get professional opinions, and then I'm going to give my opinion what should be done, and we'll decide on a recommendation to take back to the board after we make our recommendation and hear on your feedback whether you think that what we'd like to do makes sense, and go from there. Okay, so I'd like your opinions. I mean, quite frankly, you're the head of the special education department. What would you? I mean, do you support? Without you getting in trouble,
Right, I don't think that it's opinion based, and for me, gifted doesn't fall under Chapter 14.
Okay.
So that's not
Okay.
hat that I wear. I don't
Okay.
wear the gifted hat.
Okay.
I'm here to support Rebecca because Rebecca is a school psychologist who falls under
Right. Okay.
my realm. I think really Melanie, as an elementary school principal, could speak more to the emotional piece and the social piece and the concerns that her fellow administrators as building principals have.
Because kindergarten, as professionals know, it's not just about the academic rigor.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the social piece. It's about how they have matured, that bringing that maturity to the classroom. So that's it. For me. When you look at kindergarten, you can't just look at the rigorous academics. You have to look at both.
Okay.
It comes together.
Okay. I mean, and I mean, you look at it from the other end. Have you followed the children that had, these 15 children that did not qualify, did not pass this test? Have we looked and see where they are right now in the classes they are and how well they are performing in those classes?
I just know of the one that I worked with last year who did not qualify this past summer, so he hasn't entered kindergarten yet.
And who just entered kindergarten and transferred
Right.
from another school.
You probably have history though with some who have been evaluated.
See, that's what I'm trying to find out is, okay, we have a number of children that were tested, did not qualify at the range we're looking for. I mean, now they're in kindergarten, first, second grade. I mean, are they excelling, or are they middle of the range, or are they not?
You can speak to the one.
There
the
are
exception.
there are two. Because I'm just thinking of the two. There are two that just transferred into our kindergarten program from a private school. Had requested early admission, were tested, did not qualify. Parent called me again. One of the child tested again. I explained the policy can't be tested twice. So they put their children at a private school. Ended up not going very well, and so now they are of age to come to school. So now they transferred to our kindergarten program.
Okay.
They were removed from the private school.
They were removed from the private school.
My daughter is in all the honors classes,
Right.
and most of the kids that started off with her
yeah.
in kindergarten and first grade in this school district, they all talk amongst themselves on who took the gifted test. Majority of the kids that are sitting in her class took the gifted test. They are in the top 10% of their class, and they're all sitting in the honors class. They're all A students, but they didn't pass the test. And I could name them. She can bring them in. They're exceptional. They're very bright. They may have missed it by a point or two, but they're at the top of their class.
But again, there's got to be a cutoff somewhere, okay? And I'm not sure if the parents. I shared it. I have two daughters. I have three children, but I have two of my daughters. One was born on the 25th of September. The other was born on October 1st. Okay, one we got early admittance, excelled. The other one we didn't, and she's excelled. So I mean, it goes both ways. I got the one that early admittance did well. The one that didn't is stating that she's bored, but she's still flying in the top 10% of her class. So I mean, it goes both ways. Again, I appreciate the personal, but we're still we're looking overall. Okay, and understand.
I'm just answering the question when you ask them and they tell you one.
Right.
I'm just saying.
And I understand for everything they tell me, there's going to be another side of it somewhere. I really do.
Rebecca, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name.
It's Potts, Rebecca Potts.
Rebecca, Mrs. Potts. I saw your classroom yesterday on her tour.
Yes.
I was wondering, the student who you tested and who was admitted early.
I didn't test her. I'm just aware of her.
Oh, okay.
Because she's within my
Are you
school.
aware of how she is doing socially, being a younger student?
Yes, I spoke to her teacher because I was trying to prepare for this, and she said that she's doing really well in school. She plays with her friends, and she's got friends on the playground she plays with. I guess the parent expressed to the teacher that outside of school she's more likely to play by herself.
It goes both ways, because you got to feel that her friends are going to drive before she does. And then you go the other way where you hold it off. She's going to be driving before her friends do. So I mean, so it goes in both directions, and it's hard to.
I'd like to know. What my question was. Students who come to our district, our schools from other schools, maybe I don't know how common this is. Are all students in the same grade, roughly the same age, or if let's say I came from, Boyertown or Springford, and I was a little bit younger there, could I come into a grade? Could I still be younger? What I'm asking is, could the same thing happen at a different grade level? For example, 7th grade. I am maybe a year ahead, and I come in and I'm younger than everybody else in 7th grade. What I'm doing is moving the argument to a different grade level. Does that happen at all?
It's invalid because you would have passed and completed those grades in order to get that, so you would just continue.
Okay.
I just had a quick question. What is the policy to take the test again? Once you've been
year. You have to wait one calendar year. Yes, from the date of the report.
Okay. And that's the policy for just those that are coming in early, or that's the policy
If you've been assessed with that assessment.
Okay. But you say you do more than one assessment,
Yeah.
correct?
Well, it
Stanford
depends.
Binet and.
It depends which one is used.
Yeah, and it also depends what we're assessing for. Like if talking about specifically early admission, then yes, we are looking at specifically just one of the cognitive intelligence tests, whether it be the Stanford Binet, the WIPSI, or even the Woodcock-Johnson. So there's multiple.
You had a question?
You mentioned several times how it can go both ways, to use your words, and I fully agree with that. And to address something that you mentioned earlier, someone of age that gets in because of their birth date can also be left back if they don't meet the same criteria. If I were a parent of a student who was eligible to begin kindergarten in the fall and I felt he or she wasn't ready, I have the right to hold him or her back. And we actually have friends that are doing that. What we're here for, and the whole reason that we're making this petition to not change the policy, is just to allow that opportunity, even if it's 2%, even if it's 1 out of 15, whatever the ratios may be, you're doing a tremendous disservice to the 2%, to that 1 out of 15, to change the policy, to take away any opportunity whatsoever. Now, I realize there's always going to be special exceptions and a way around it that you'd mentioned, but to a parent that's approaching the school district for the first time, as we did last year, seeing that the policy states that, they may not be aware that there's a way around it. To leave the policy open at least gives that potential, and I think that is, as other parents here have said, that puts the interest of the child first. And
right.
If the issue is budget, if the issue is committing someone's time, the effort, then let's find a way to work around that.
And I think that's where we're headed. I mean, that's where, like, personally, where I'm headed. I'm going to give you just a little I believe personally, and my fellow committee members may disagree, I think the 3-month window is huge. Okay, I believe that's too big. I mean, at a child at that age, a full quarter is a large window. And it may not be agreed, but emotionally, it's a big window, and I'm not sure that I am comfortable as a board member leaving the window open to November 30th, as well as testing. I may be, and we're gonna work this out probably in the next few minutes. I'm much more acceptable to cutting that window down a little bit, maybe to say October 30th or maybe the end of September, some other shorter window, and then there's the testing aspect, which I'm still waiting for Mr. Subers to come back with an answer on, but I believe because we do not have to allow early admittance at all, that there's a possibility that we could specify which test that we would recommend, and then an outside certified school psychologist could administer that test and provide us with the results. And I think that we're more acceptable. Again, we're the issue we have, and it's a good thing and it's an unfortunate thing, is our special education load in this district is, because of what we do with special education kids and how well we do, is increasing dramatically. When I started the board, I think we had 1 school psychologist. Now we have 3 school psychologists, and we probably could use another based upon the load. We're at 700 and something classified special education, and this isn't gifted. This is just the special education load. And with 3 school psychologists that have to do assessments on these children on a routine basis, the loadings is huge.
You said the testing takes an hour and a half. How long does it take to write the report?
That takes about another hour and a half to 2 hours.
So you're taking a half a day out of a person, which, again, I don't want to hold it, it shouldn't be used as a reason why we don't administer a test or why we wouldn't give early admissions in for a student, because, again, I would hate to see that and then ruin a child's education or stifle a child's education because of the fact, and again, I know it because I had one that come home every day and I'm bored, and even though you're in the honors and the AP classes, you're bored. And I hate to see that. I would hate to see that happen. So we're trying to come up with an alternative to that, because right now as it stands right now, the administration's recommending no early admissions.
What is the total amount of resources and time and money, not this will necessarily change my opinion, dedicated to testing one student?
For early admission?
Yeah.
It could be anywhere, probably at maximum 4 hours.
But then you're not doing the other portion of which is what we're hearing. They're not able to do their other stuff. But
Well, if there are only 15 students, 15 students times 4 hours, what, 60 hours?
right now they're maxed out in their
Right now, I'm
load.
sitting at about a caseload of 15 between now and June 2nd,
Oh.
and each one of those evaluations can take me anywhere from 8 to 10 hours with testing and
This is
report
special
writing.
education stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
What's
both
changed
special and gifted
since the
testing.
time that this policy obviously was written until now in special education, and why there was an increase in school psychologists, is when this initially was written, our timeline for assessing all of our special education students on a either every 2 years or every 3 years, depending on their disability, when this was started, was 60 school days. Well, in the past few years, all the guidelines have changed, and now they've crunched the school psychologist time to 60 calendar days. So all of those days now count, and it really has shortened the time. And we are mandated. There is no leeway for missing that 60th day, and that's not her last day to work with students. That's her final day to have her report completed and have had her meeting with parents.
Would it be possible, I'm not sure how it stands now, let's say I had a son and my son was about to enter kindergarten, and I wanted him to, I thought he would be good in the early, he would be good to be admitted early. And I wanted that student to be tested by an outside psychologist, by a third party. Would that be admissible if I
Well,
were to bring the results?
again, according to Mr. Subers, we don't have to allow any early admission. And that's where we're going. I think that's where we're going to end up headed. We don't have to allow early admissions. Therefore, we can set whatever guidelines and restrictions we want
Could we
on
say,
the early admission.
My question is, then, can we say, we will not test students for early admission? However,
Yes.
if you bring results
Yes.
saying that your son or daughter is qualified
Yes.
by a psychologist to the district, we will.
We can change. I believe we can change the wording of this policy that states that as long as you bring, right here it very clearly says a state certified school psychologist performs a test using one of the following tests, and that person tests at 2 years chronologically older than they currently are, then we could consider them for early admission.
So if we were to change this policy to this proposed policy, we just would not do the testing.
Right.
We could still allow students in if they were to go to a third party and be tested.
Correct. Again, I think the word that I know that wasn't what was proposed. That's what we're proposing. That's what we're talking
That's what we're
about,
discussing
going
as
back to the board as with an alternate. Because right now what was proposed is
Not at
zero.
all. And I don't think that.
At the start of the meeting, you asked for all the things that need to be considered, and I
Right.
just wanted to, based on the conversation that we've had so far, throw out 2 additional things that I think really need to be considered here. One is, there is no policy for transferring in a student who was born early after first grade, which I believe is the way the policy is written.
Correct.
Meaning I can transfer in our daughter to second grade. So what essentially the change in the policy may do is if the opportunity is taken away, what you're doing is you're basically separating her from her peer group that she's going to continue from 3rd grade through 12th grade for an additional 3 years. It just seems like an unnecessary penalty, even if, she were to get, into 1st grade, there's still that additional year. Why not start her with the peer group that she's going to finish with from the start? That seems to be the most fair thing to do for the child.
I'm not sure I follow the entire argument.
If a child doesn't pass the test to get
Right.
into kindergarten or 1st grade, they can go into a different school to kindergarten and 1st grade and transfer into second
But
grade
most of those other
automatically.
schools all have policies on age limitations and testings and.
Right, they do. And so, for example, you can test your child at another school, a private school, for example, and they could get in. They could have passed the test. So then we could send our child to that kindergarten because she passed that same Binet or whatever test you just said. She passed that at another school, and let's say, so we send her there, right?
Right.
Then we would have to bring her here, this is where we want her to be, for 1st grade.
For second.
for second grade.
Okay.
So what I wanted to ask is, somewhere in there is, and we need to touch on it sometime, is about the first grade admittance policy.
Right.
Can you read?
I believe that's PDE mandated. That's not our policy. So there's some things that we can and there's some things we cannot touch.
Okay.
Because we don't have to offer kindergarten, we can
Right.
put whatever restrictions we want to do, we want to put on it. That you've got to wear a t-shirt backwards and no sneakers if we want. And I know that's ridiculous, but I'm going, there is stuff that is PDE mandated. And I believe the kindergarten age is a PDE mandated that we can't do anything about.
But I think what he's saying is,
first grade, I'm sorry, it's
I
first
think what
grade.
he's saying is if a child doesn't get tested in here, that child will go get tested somewhere else and will get in somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that means we then bring that child, anyone brings that child back to the elementary school in first grade or second grade. You're still getting that child. The child will still be ahead.
At that age.
Right.
Because a parent will make that happen. Like,
Well, why don't we just lay it right on the right now? I don't think, and you two can say yes or no. I don't think any one of the three of us is in favor of eliminating the early admissions if the child is tested but we want to further define several things. And I think, am I correct?
Yes, I agree.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, so the answer, I don't think we're looking to eliminate early admission. I think what we want to do is put further define and determine who will do that testing, okay?
Just to finish my earlier thought too, I also wanted to point out the second issue which needs to be considered here is I think you're also doing a disservice to the school district because we and other parents that are in a similar situation also have the opportunity of taking our child out of the Boone School District altogether and putting her into a private school. And where that does a disservice is you're essentially going to be turning away some bright students just because of their birth date. And I think that does not only the child a disservice because it's not the first choice of the parents for school, for example, as in our case, but it also does the school district a disservice because you're not getting the intellect from those kids.
Okay. And again, I don't think that's the recommendation we're going to be bringing back, so.
I do like the idea that you are not eliminating it. I would rather a test be brought in from from someone else. It's $150 to have an IQ test. Parents, if they want their kids tested, I'm quite sure they'll be willing to pay for it. But I do know, I have a neighbor, her daughter's birthday is October. She could not start school in Boone. She was exceptional, bright. She never had the gifted test. She just looked and said, okay, she missed the cutoff. They sent her to Immaculate, started kindergarten, and they were thinking to transfer her over here for first grade. But she loved it so much, they kept her over. Everybody has a game. They know the way to beat your system. If they can't start here in kindergarten, they'll send them someplace else, and then they'll transfer them.
But, it is going to be what it is. I mean, you're not going to satisfy 100% of the people 100% of the time.
Well, I'm just saying that the kids will end up here anyway because they just transfer them back.
Right, and that is fine. But one of the things we need to look at is just that. Also understand that the one of the things that the solicitor said was that and this is where you run into that slippery slope. We need to do two things if we're going to bring this forward. We need to very clearly define the tests we're willing to accept. I mean, if these are standard, then these are the three tests. Who will administer that test? Their criteria. It can't be a technician. It needs to be a Pennsylvania certified school psychologist. Is that correct?
Yes. We've had in the past situations where parents are school psychologists
Right.
and they've tested their children.
That is unacceptable.
I don't think that's valid.
No, that's unacceptable.
But we have had that case come up.
Yeah, I think then you put in there an independent and maybe another word, non-related, non-biased.
That was going to be my next comment. This happened in Louisiana because the top schools, it's fierce to get in them.
Yeah.
And, people were finding ways to get their kids to pass an IQ test. And that's my biggest concern is that, you're going to have some shady, psychologists out there that's willing to give the kids that.
We can also, I assume we can also recommend these. Now, the wording of the policy could be that you could petition Doesn't mean it has to be accepted. I mean, because as you said, if you know the community. I mean, I'm a salesman. I know the shady salesmen that are out there in the world that sell what I sell. You probably know some of the school psychologists out there that are just basically churning IQ tests for $150 a pop. So, we can come up with a recommended list of school psychologists. Doesn't mean you got to use them, but these are the ones that we feel confident to use.
I guess what I would propose, it's just like anything else where, you would still go and you'd petition the school and say, okay, I want to have my child tested. What is the process for doing
right.
it? Well, here's the process. Here's the packet, to the parent, and the packet is you have to have these requirements, and here's the recommended people that here's the required tests, and here's the recommended people in the area that qualify and meet that requirement.
I mean, it's no different than when you go in and you're going outside of your primary care physician. They give you a list of doctors. You want to use somebody else? Go ahead, but guess what? It's not covered, and we don't have to accept it.
And before you do, I want to see the credentials of those, and then we'll, on a case-by-case basis, and I would suggest we would try to limit that to where we're reviewing everyone from King of Prussia to Philadelphia to everywhere else.
And I would say you need a document saying this person is not a relative, a cousin, or whatever.
But we're getting into the problem solving of the policy.
Yes, we got to solve that problem, but we're headed in the direction we want. Mrs. Hick?
I appreciate the conversation and where this is all going. This might be the very best compromise that we've come up with. I just want to be devil's advocate for a minute in that we're a public school and that requiring a $150 fee of parents.
It's 100% legal because of the simple fact that we do not have to require entry at all.
I know that it's legal, but in some ways we're kind of segregating the population of parents who are savvy and have means as opposed to parents who might not have the same background. But their kids might be every bit as bright, if not brighter, and yet we might be still limiting.
What if we use the free and reduced lunch model? We do that with a lot of programs. If you cannot afford, if you are eligible for free or reduced lunch, you can have the school psychologist.
Well, it's kind of hard. Again, if they already have children going to school, it was okay. Understanding one thing, you don't have to put proof of income to be eligible. You just have to say, I'm eligible for free and school lunch, fill the form out and send it in. There is no checking. So people can beat that. Mr. Schapp.
When I taught school, I was a salaried employee.
Yep.
Taught X number of days, a certain job to do. How do we pay our school psychologists? Are they paid hourly or salary?
They're salaried, but you're missing the point of the problem, of their problem. They don't have enough hours in the day to do their job.
I just want to know. So they are salaried?
Yes.
Okay. And you're telling me over the last 3 years, this has happened 15 times.
Yep.
So it's happening 5 times a year. That's what you're telling me.
Yes.
I don't, here's my opinion.
Yes.
I don't think that's excessive amount of work by our psychologists to do testing 5 children. That's all I'm telling you. I don't think that's excessive. And I think the opportunity ought to be there for the district to do it as they've done now, or have somebody do it from the outside. There should be the option of the two. That's all I'm saying. All I can tell you is I was a salaried employee, and if my principal came to me and say, well, now this year we're going to do this on top of what you're doing, I didn't have a choice. I did it. And as I noticed over the 36 years, things were added and added. They were never deleted. They were added. And what I'm saying is, well, I'm looking at 5 times to do this in the school year with 3 psychologists you're telling me you have, correct?
Yes.
I don't think that's an excessive requirement. That's my opinion.
That's fine. But as we're looking right now, we're coming close on several occasions of not making our reporting on our special education students, and adding a half a day is enough that could potentially put us in violation, and the board isn't going to do it. I mean, that's where we're coming from. We need, if we had a 4th psychologist added, which means we'd have to add that person to the budget, and then we know the old tax implication, everything else, which we've heard you speak on, then maybe we'd have that bandwidth. But we don't have the bandwidth right now, and that's why we need to come up with an alternative.
Not to ask a rude question in any way, so
Yeah.
please don't take this the wrong way, but why is a special ed student that needs help to catch up to the rest of the class more valuable time-wise? than
It's
a
not
student-
it's Pennsylvania, it's state mandated. It's not
It's
us.
federally
And state
mandated.
mandated that these tests are done on a periodic basis in a time frame, and if you don't, then there's penalties for it.
Well, outside of, the framework that sets that up, if you just look at it in terms of one student versus another
Right.
student, I think the students that are potential early admission candidates be given the same consideration that some that need additional help are given. And whether the state mandates it or not, I'd like to be proud of the school district for at least saying that we give that chance.
And we're trying to, again, we as board members are trying, and I think the administration got slightly upset with the fact that we pulled this because they wanted it this way. So, and we felt that, that it needs to be changed, and we're going to try to find a way to get it done, and that's what we're here for. So, and I share in Mr. Schatz's story. I'm the same way. You get 40 hours. If it takes you 60 hours, it takes you 70 hours. You got a job. You're getting paid to do a job. We're just trying to find a way of getting it done in the best manner. And granted, there's only 5, the fact that this is out, maybe there'll be 25 next year because we put this out and people understand that, that all of a sudden, I didn't know I could send my child to school a little earlier now, thanks to, what's going on. And all of a sudden we deluge with it. So we're attempting to come up with some type of methodology to fix it. So.
Well, the other side of that is that you might be bringing more intellectual students into your
Right.
school
And
district
again,
as well that may have gone to or private school
Correct.
otherwise.
So.
Well, I think it's time we start answering some
Yeah.
questions. First one would be, would we allow third parties?
Well, let's first question is, we already answered that we as a committee want to bring in a unanimous recommendation that we keep the policy in place and that we allow early admissions, okay? And we're going to walk back to the exceptions. So is that correct?
Yes.
That being said, are we all comfortable with the November 30th as the back end cutoff date, or do we want to slide that forward to another date?
What does our administrators recommend?
Well, I will say this. Children who, it's actually, studies show that children who are old for grade versus young for grade actually have more of an advantage, and that students young for grade are actually more likely to be referred for special education and attention deficit. So studies have shown that. I will say that.
So
We
your
actually-
recommendation or that from the guidance committee was to lessen that window?
Yeah, to move it, I believe September 30th is what Emery had suggested.
I mean, that's a pretty obvious statement. If we make the cutoff date, March 1st, obviously those kids are going to do much better than the previous generations too. And another thing to consider here is when my wife and I were in school, the arbitrary, and you have to admit it's an arbitrary date because it changes, was January 1st. So, I mean, that's changed a lot, and it may be based on research, it may not, but we just need to admit that that is an arbitrary date. And I think to narrow that window too much is putting too much emphasis on that arbitrary date.
What are the chances of somebody who was born on the 27th of November taking this test prior to the school year? Because now that child is 4.5.
They would probably take it in May.
They would take it in May, so now that child is 4.25.
And honestly, IQ is not really stable until about 8 years of age.
Yeah.
So really, all this could be wrong anyway if IQ isn't stable till 8 years.
So again, what I'm trying to do is, I mean, is it a point that we even, people out in the audience are very strongly opinionated one way. Is it one of these soft, and go back to negotiations here, is this one of these soft and tangible where you leave it at November 30th knowing that no child that applies that was born on the 27th of November would probably ever pass this test anyways, regardless of whether it was given to somebody else or we gave it, leave it in place and let it go.
Well, I certainly think that
Right.
that's a little bit.
You agree?
I do.
Okay.
Because you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, it's an easy, give it
Right.
and not in.
Because I think the delta of whether it's September 30th or October 1st
Yeah.
is much more realistic.
Right. But leave it at it as it is at November 30th. It's it's a no-cost negotiable, if you want to put it in those terms. So we'll leave it at November 30th. However, I would like to ask the staff to come up with the wording and the recommendations, the name of the tests, for an outside organization to do the tests. If you list of 4 or 5 state registered, what exactly those criteria are for that, because I can go probably and get it. I get a state of Pennsylvania certified school psychologist online, which means nothing. So, I mean, actually, what test, whatever you need, whatever that registration is called. I know I'm teaching, and you got to pass the praxis and a bunch of other. What do they actually have to have to be certified? And if you got a name of a handful to a half a dozen that we can say here they are, and to go from there. Now, we will have to address with the administration the people that may not be able to afford that test. We may have to find some, and we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with that. That's still out there, but that's...
Well, I do know Northern Lebanon charges $250 per evaluation.
Yeah, see,
there's
schools charge for the evaluation. So if we can get an outside to do it, then...
Can you just give me a ballpark, like, is there location here? Is you gotta, if I wanted to, so I come into the school and you give me my pack and you say you gotta go somewhere else. Am I going to am I going to like a Sylvan Learning Center? Am I going to like Reading? Am I going
There's
to
an outfit right on Route 10 there as you get off of 724. You go up on the right-hand side as you're heading south, right across from Flying Hills. Does all that kind of testing right there.
So there are local...
Yes, there are.
There's 2 in Pottstown, I know, that do it.
Or even there are even
child psychologists.
School psychologists in school districts who do contractual work, who would be willing to do it as well. Yes.
So we're going to leave it in place, leave the November 30th date, and come up with what we need to do. And again, we can keep this in place until we add a 4th psychologist when things free up, and maybe we bring it back in house at the time. But right now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to see us get in trouble because we're not getting our examinations done that we need to get done.
Okay, but if I understood correctly, this is the month where this starts. Is that correct? When do we start testing, and how are we going to?
Well, the letters
were due
May 1st.
So May 1st is behind us. So do we have? What do we have here for September?
You got one, huh?
One.
Yeah.
We know the other.
Yeah. So they got
Three. So you
3.
have
So everything that's in the chute, I mean, everybody that's in is already grandfathered.
Right.
So this policy moves, and the deadline was May 1st, so there are no others coming in.
Right.
So this would be for the next school year.
Right.
So 3 this year, 3 psychologists, 1 per psychologist?
Yeah. Well, however they break it up, that's up to her to break it up.
It's for Monocacy, so
Oh, is it just 3 for Monocacy? We don't know for the whole district?
I don't know that any others.
There might be one at APC.
Oh,
Okay, but bottom line is the 3 that are in, we will conduct that testing this
Right,
year.
We
as
have to
per
by
this
policy.
And as we do our policy for next year, what we just discussed would be that policy.
Right. We have to because the policy hasn't been changed yet. So if we change this policy in the middle of April, then that would have changed how we did that. So I think we keep the May 1st deadline still. I think we need to leave that in place, that May 1st has to be the deadline, that they need to notify us to get their packet.
Well, we certainly need to, because the administration needs to know how many kids they're going to have in school.
Right.
Right.
Potential, yeah.
Mr. Schott?
So if I understand this correctly, for the next fiscal year, for the next school year, then,
Right.
there'd be no in-house testing for this?
No,
What you're
the
saying?
year after that. This upcoming school year that starts in September, we have 3.
But you would write that in the policy somehow? There'd be
That
no-
effective the school year 14-15, I believe it is.
No, this is 13, 14.
Well, 13-14,
No, this is 12, 13.
yeah, 13-14, yeah,
So effective
13-14.
13, 14.
There'd be no in-house testing for early kindergarten?
Correct.
Right, that's what you're saying.
Correct.
Would current psychologists that are employed by Daniel Boone be on the list of people who could be hired separately to administer the test? Do you understand my question?
I know what your question is, and I don't know how we couldn't allow them, but then I would have a little bit of problem by allowing them to do it. Because, again, my problem is if you can't do it during your school day, yet you can do it after for the extra money.
That's
They
I'm-
can do it in June, like later in
Yeah.
June.
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I mean, In my opinion, they should be allowed to be on that list. That's my opinion.
Right.
On their own time, not in the
Right.
school district.
Correct.
That's right. I would think so as
Yes.
well, Mr. Sheehy.
I don't think we can prevent them from being on the list, because even though they're not on the list, you could still go to them outside because they meet the guidelines.
But I think we also, you just said a key point that I guess would concern me a little. There has to be the time frame of, so we said May 1st would be the time period where it would need to be submitted. When is the drop dead and test need to be completed by? We need to go
Yeah,
into that policy.
that is an area of concern
All right,
because
because-
it's not possible to be done this year.
No, we're not
As the
talking this
policy
year. We're
states.
talking next year.
Well,
but
no,
as
the policy states
for
they
this
need to
year-
have this young lady tested by the end of the school year.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's really not possible.
Okay, so that goes into what we're talking about next year. If
Right.
it's outside source, it should
We
be
could
possible.
still say that because
By
it's
the end
an
of-
outside
yeah.
source.
Yeah.
And there's something
And
else.
I think we need to go there because,
There needs to
you know,
be-
that could be 3 children that are in class or not in class
Right.
in September, and you need to know that and be prepared for that.
Now, let's say a student is tested and by an outside source, by a third party, and he does not get the necessary 130 IQ. Can he go back and be tested by another psychologist? We need to address that.
I don't want to play shop a psychologist till you get the score you want. Okay?
I don't know how you're going to regulate that.
Yeah, then
I don't know how you're going to regulate
Well,
that.
part of the problem,
You're never going to know.
Yeah.
the validity of the way standardized testing works is the publishers put forth guidelines that technically students shouldn't be tested less than 2 years according to test publishers standards. The district does allow 1 year because there are practice effects which affect the validity of the test. Because the students, once they take it once, they kind of know what to expect. They know what answers to kind of look for. So that's why we try to at least give them a year to test. So even if they go to one psychologist and they don't get the results they want, just because they go to another one who gives the same test, it's not going to be valid.
But we won't know that.
Yeah, that's what we're just,
Right.
that's basically.
If they don't submit the results, I see what you're saying.
So I didn't like.
Now, the only way we can do it is we could have a form attached that they need to submit to us prior to the test being submitted to get information from us or provide.
Or just like when I get my x-ray taken, it's sent to the doctor,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
So,
Yes. And again, I believe that's maybe the parents shouldn't see a copy of the results. Should be sent directly to the school district, like your letter, your
That's a
reference.
great idea.
That way, you don't get to see it.
But if they're paying for it, you're not going to be able to make determinations on what they see and can't see, right?
Well, you pay for an X-ray, you don't get to
they
see
can,
it.
they can see it, right? I mean,
They could ask. I mean,
Well,
yeah,
the
I mean,
results should be given to the parent and
That's
sent
right.
to the school district.
Yeah, yeah.
good idea.
Yes.
This is a question for the,
Hang on.
this is just out of my own ignorance, I just don't know,
Yes.
but the workload that they're not able to keep up with now, is there an end point for that?
Yes, the end of the school year, and it starts again next year.
Right, so-
The last day of school.
So considering the time frame, if the letter of intent is submitted by May 1st, maybe administer the test sometime at the end of the school year after everything is done? Is that a possibility? To have it done in, June or July?
Well, that's what I will be doing.
Right.
Is I will probably be contacting you sometime after the end of the school year to say, when can you bring your student in or your child in? It's
that's
just at
be-
that point, I will be working on contractual hours.
Right.
Not
So it's
not
an
on my
hourly
salary
rate.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe, again, you gotta look, you're paid
I'm
first day of
probably-
school to the last day of school, and not paid during the summer.
That's the part I didn't understand.
Okay?
Gotcha.
Right.
So she's a 10-month employee of the district. So that's why
To work beyond the school.
is a contractual where she bills and
Contractual,
bills
right.
us, the district, for it, so, okay. But yeah, we need to come up with, again, the recommendation on how to get it. As you said, maybe a self-addressed envelope where an envelope goes to the district and a copy of the report goes to the parent.
Okay, so I'm a parent. I'm going to pay my money, $150 to $200
Right.
for my child to be tested outside.
Mm-hmm.
Then I give you the results. Say they meet the requirements, 130 or better.
Right.
You have the discretion then to say, oh no, my child can't get in because I didn't go to your suggested or recommended list.
No, I think the wording of the policy has to be, then you can petition to have your child admitted. Although, if they make the 130, it's you could probably say it's 100% guarantee they're going to be, but
Okay.
you still have to say petition, because what happens if by the time we get the report, we find out you paid $500 to have your test pencil whipped or something? You still got a piece of paper that said they scored a 130. You understand? But he didn't score a 130. You paid the extra money for the psychologist to give you a 130. So we have to make sure we cover all our ground. So your petition for your child, and in all petitions, it could be accepted or it could be rejected. But you still have to, as long as it's a good test, it meets the criteria, you're gonna make it.
An option we could possibly do, and this is just an idea, I'm not necessarily advocating for it, just suggesting it, maybe if the third-party psychologist comes back and says this student received a score of 130, then we can have one of our school psychologists do an in-house test. That might be dangerous.
I'm not.
Idea.
We're trying to get them out of doing it.
I guess basically what I would consider is we're getting very into the details.
Right. Let them come back with the policy for us, what they recommend, and we can review that.
I was just going to say, I thinking policy-wise, should there be a stipulation to say we have the right to verify the results on our own?
Mm-hmm.
Like, throwing that in, like, if there's a concern, if you really think they went and bought the thing, that the school psychologist could conduct their own. It might be an alternate test, might not be the same test because of the validity concerns.
Right.
But you could have that.
But yeah, again, we'd have the right to verify the results, and I think that would. Okay. Anything else? Okay. For those, and this is going to hit the curriculum committee very shortly. For those that don't know, I'm on the diversity committee as well as and Mrs. Lacey. We're going to be looking very heavily into our curriculum. We don't really have a lot of. I was going to want to talk about it that we don't have a lot of direction yet, at least from the diversity committee, and probably won't for the next meeting. Which yeah, that's right. I forgot, Megan, you're on. I know, but I got to make sure that everybody. You got to work at it.
I'm an alternate. You forgot about me.
He's an alternate. Okay. But the next meeting, I won't be able to, we're not going to have a meeting in June probably because it's the end of the school year. Starting in September, we're probably going to get into it very on our monthly meetings, talking about different points. A lot of things we do, that we need to make sure that when we cover as far as diversity, it's all forms of diversity, whether it's religious, whether it's ethnic, whether it's racial. That we do some things. There's a lot of things that we do that we cover. In World War II, we talk about what Hitler did. Not a lot of people understand 100% of the details. How that got going. That the internments of the Japanese in World War II, what slavery really was about, and how that worked in the Civil War. They show the movie Glory, but they don't get in. There's no prepping for the movie, and then there's no decompressing from the movie. It's shown and it's there, and it's got quite a bit of language in it, and we're going to, as a committee and as this committee, as a diverse committee, work on making sure that's taken in and written into so that the sensitivity to it is much clearer. So we may be coming back to our psychologists and to make sure that we're not off the mark very well, that we're hitting it pretty well. So okay, anything else? Thank you. Thank you. Good to go.
End of the meeting.
I never got it. I turn it off. You sent it twice.
Let's see. I think we hit